mean, I don't like to admit this, but I think this is the only thing that Harvard does better than Stanford. So it's a great conference. I admit that. I give it to you. We've been trying to duplicate it, and we haven't been successful. We play in Asia. We've seen it. Countries going from advert poverty that we see in Africa and prospering, joining the developed nations. What happened in Korea, what happened in other places. But for some reason, we're talking about it as if it also is a guaranteed thing. We're waiting our line in order to get that. But that is not the case. There's a potential that we could get it, but there's also a potential that it could go in an even bigger despair. And specifically at this time, it has never been more important to step back, analyze, and see what direction we're taking. Because for me, the African story is not just an African opportunity, it's a global opportunity, and it could also be a global crisis. And because for us, when you look at a lot of the stuff that is happening, so we are far away from Syria, but what is happening in Syria is affecting us. What is happening in Eritrea, what is happening in Somalia, what is happening in South Sudan affects us, at least with the migration, with the immigration that is happening, but in many forms, it will affect you with terrorism, with extremism that is happening. So when countries fail, they affect everybody because we're global neighbors. It's a global world. It's a global nation. So when your neighbor's house is on fire, your house is on fire. So for me, I started looking at the American has the American dream. And that is the story that captured the headline of the movie that played of the growth in America. The Asian with the Asian miracle. What is happening for Africa? For me, I define that as the African opportunity. We've seen the movie play in other markets. We've seen the movie play in other countries. And in ours, it's just starting. The story hasn't been written. You're all starring in it. Because at the end of the day, whoever you are, wherever you are, you're impacted by this. I want to give you a case study. When I talk about the crossroad, let's take the Ethiopian farmer, for example. The average Ethiopian farmer in 1990 had 5 hectares of land and roughly around 6-7 kids. The average Ethiopian farmer right now has less than 1 hectare of land, but 5 kids. So what is going to happen 15 years from now? In Ethiopia, half of the population is under the age of 15. So when you have 85% of your population that are farmers and that are living in this 1 hectare that are going to be divided, we are at a time, a rare time, a junction where the land cannot be divided anymore. So what are the other 4 kids going to do? And medical miracle has also improved. So even the father is living a lot longer. So he's not dying off when he's 40 and handing it off to his kids. So that fundamental has changed. So what is going to happen in that crossroads? So for us, everybody is talking about, the population dividend that we're going to get. That is only if Africa develops the right way. If it doesn't develop the right way, this is a crisis. And that crisis is already happening. So when you take countries that are hubs for their regions, like Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Ethiopia. Look at Ethiopia, for example. Ethiopia is one of the biggest sources of migration around the world, but it's also one of the biggest destinations of migration for its neighbors. When you look at immigrants from South Sudan, Somalia, Eritrea, and all the other places, because when your neighbor's house is on fire, your house is on fire. Because whatever growth that you're having affects you. So again, Africa is approaching a crossroad where we have 2 paths. There's this fantastic opportunity to go on the right path, but there's also a potential to be in despair. And we're all playing in that movie. And let's try to see where it will take us, right? So what is the solution? The solution is simple. You have to create a lot of jobs. I mean, there are many other aspects that needs to be handled, that needs to be addressed, but jobs. You can give it a lot of superlatives, however way you want, but at the end of the day, jobs. Because when you have a huge number of your population not being hidden by the family farm, the subsistence farmer, there is a requirement, there's a need. So when you're looking at kind of African leaders, Ethiopian leaders specifically, when they're looking at this, they're looking at it as a state of crisis. So for us, we have to create jobs by all means necessary. So who creates this job? It's you. So what I mean by you is everybody. It's an entrepreneur. It's a consultant. It's a big business. It's a small business. It's the government's jobs. It's the manufacturing jobs. Blue collar, white collar, pink collar, yellow collar, whatever you want to call it. All kind of jobs that we really want. But the problem is, again, this is a global economy. China doesn't want to give up its jobs. America wants its job back. In fact, if you want to get elected, all you have to do is, claim that you're bringing jobs. So you are competing for all of these jobs. So when an African leader looks at the stuff, if we don't create it before us, we are in that state of crisis. And if we do not create these jobs, if we do not compete, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't want to take a gamble on the other paths. So for us, it's not a nice to have, it's a must have. We could have afforded, to squander the momentum that we had in the 80s, in the 70s. But we can't afford to do that. And if we do that, we've seen what happened in the Arab Springs and the other places, because in the past, when you're looking at the rural farmer wasn't connected. The rural farmer didn't have a Facebook account. Right now, the rural farmer in Ethiopia actually has Twitter. They are on Facebook. They're connected. They know what you're doing. And they want to be part of the global economy. And they want to organize. And they could be reached. Reached by who? They could be reached by a keynote speaker here. They could be reached by a TED speaker to be inspired. But they could also be reached by a terrorist. They could be organized. So for us, there has never been a more important time to look at that crossroad. But at the end of the day, when you want to go back, when you want to create jobs, there are two key factors: governance and infrastructure. When governance, so for me, I'm originally from Ethiopia, but I'm not just looking at Ethiopia as a market where I want to work in. I want to work in as many countries as possible. But there are 8 to 15 countries in Africa that I would never dare step foot in. Why? Because of governance. Because who in their right mind is going to work in Mogadishu? No one. I'm a crazy guy. So I have an office in Hargeisa, and Somaliland is much better than Somalia, but a huge difference. I can't work in South Sudan right now. I can't work in Eritrea. Those are my brothers. That's my neighbors. But I can't work there. I can't work in Sudan. I can't work in Libya. There are many places. So governance blocks us. It has to be solved. And whenever there are countries, and we have seen this improvement, where look at what happened with Yahya Jammeh. It's not the Americans, it's not the French that went in and told them to step aside. It is the African leaders and his neighbors. They've stepped up. They're not that much better than him, but they are better. And they have improved. And we are trying to see this big improvement. So for us, it is starting to be a crossroad where governance has improved. And when you look at infrastructure, in the business plan competition yesterday, one of the team, ICE, they're talking about creating microgrids with solar panels on the rooftops of malls around Nigeria. Their business only works if and only if the Nigerian grid system is a disaster. And it is a disaster. So their business is going to do very well. Good for them, but not good for Nigeria, because Nigeria cannot compete. So if I want to create businesses, the quantity of jobs I could create and the quantity of jobs I could create are dictated by the type of infrastructure that exists. Because at the end of the day, we say the world is global. So whatever products that I'm making, I'm not just competing with Guinea or Gambia or Senegal. I'm competing with a factory in Denmark, or a factory in China, a factory in Singapore, and all the transportation is so much better, and I have a better opportunity to export to my neighbors, but it costs more because the infrastructure is not in place. It costs more to send something from Addis to Nairobi or even Juba, because the infrastructure is not in place to do those things. So those two factors are bottlenecks. It dictates the kind of jobs you could create, the kind of businesses that you could do. So how can we change this? What are the lessons that I've learned in order to tell me the approach that I take in trying to start a business, as well as in growing that business? First lesson is perspective. What do I mean by that? So after graduating from Stanford, I went to a VC firm, and I've been working in the VC firm, so I've met a lot of the investors that would have invested around the world. And so when I decided to move back to Ethiopia, I told those are the people that I knew. Those are the Rolodex that I have. So I started talking to them. I started trying to get them to invest. Oh my God. I didn't get a single penny. Here, the key thing for me is time. So the key thing for me on that time was, when I'm talking with a middle-aged man from any Western nation, they don't remember a time when New York or London or Singapore or Boston was ever like Addis, was ever like Nairobi, was ever like Lagos. So for them, they would automatically just cannot relate to it. They don't remember a time when the US was like that. But when I'm working with my partners that have worked in Shenzhen, if they were born in the 1960s, they remember. It was just like Addis. It was even worse. So for them, it was an opportunity. So that automatically they're saying, we need to find a way to quickly invest. So we're driving around Addis, and they would say, who owns that land? I think some family. Buy it. That could cost, $500,000, $1 million. Doesn't matter. You know how much this would have cost in Hong Kong 30 years ago? If I bought that, I would not be working with you right now. So the thing is, I am not trying to convince them. I'm not going around telling them, oh, please work with me, or let me show you how Africa could work, how Africa could be a viable business. They get it. So find the right business that have seen the movie play, that believes in that movie. It doesn't matter. I'm not sitting here saying, don't work with American businessmen. That's not true. But the American businessman that doesn't get it is going to slow you down. But the American businessman that gets it and that wants to invest and that wants to do the right thing is the partner that you have to work with. So solutions on the ground. This one, and I'm running out of time, so I'll be quick on this. When I decided to move back to Ethiopia, it was not an easy decision. It wasn't even a decision initially. I thought I could do it from Palo Alto. I started a mobile business. Thought it could be done. Why not? Talked to my dad. He's an old man, so he annoys me because he doesn't tell me the answer directly. He just likes to tell stories. So here's a story that he told me. He said, Sam, let me tell you, there was this young Ethiopian lady. She went outside and she's desperately looking for something. A wise old man comes over and says, young lady, what are you doing? And then she says, I lost my needle. I'm looking for my needle. I can't find it. And he goes, okay, hold on. I'm going to help you. So he rolls up his sleeves and he says, first, where did you lose the needle? And she says, oh, I lost a needle inside the house. He goes, what? Then what are you doing outside? She said, oh, it's dark inside. The light is outside. It took me a while to get that. But that's what I was doing. And that's what a lot of businesses are doing right now in Africa.
Yeah.
Look, opportunity. You see, the opportunity, the know-how, the resources is here. And the challenge is there. And it is scary, I know. And moving back is not easy. Once you have created your own comfort zone, it's very hard to transition. But you have to find a way, because at the end of the day, if the needle's inside, you are not going to find it outside. Maybe your role is not to go inside. Maybe your role is to open up the roof, put up the light, and help the lady find the needle. Or maybe go inside and move up the chairs, move up the obstacles so that you can find it. Maybe take a light bulb and go inside. If your light bulb is too small, then that's why you're in school. That's why you're getting that resource, so that you will get a heavier light bulb to go in and find that proverbial needle. And that's what we have to do. And the last point that I want to make for you is you can impact from everywhere. Moving back works, and staying back also works. So can you imagine a young Barack Obama inspired in a Harvard hall room and then decides he want to follow up in his father's footstep and goes into Kenyan politics? So you could impact here. You could impact in whatever. So if you are a lawyer, go into the best law firms, partner, and guess what? All the American businesses that you want to work for, they're coming to Africa. They're hiring on the same price. GE has over hundreds of employees all over Africa, and their business is growing. Samsung's business is growing. Siemens, Vestas, all the major companies have gotten it. Chinese companies are all over the place in Africa. Korean companies are all over the place in Africa. And it is time to find a way for all of us to identify how you could be of help and how you could contribute and create that partnership with the team that is on the ground and engage with them. So, in summary, it is an African opportunity. The movie is playing. We have no option but to actually nudge it and force it in the right direction, because the alternative is futile. Nothing is promised. We have to go for it and get it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Woo!
Thank you.
Standing ovation. God, son.
Thank you, guys.
Y'all
Y'all get in there. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sure.